Hi, everybody. My name is Greg Katz, and welcome to USC's Inside the Trojans Huddle, where we tell it like it is. Friends, Inside the Trojans Huddle is a game-like panel discussion with USC columnists, staff writers, and editorial board. We first start with our pregame show, where we introduce our panel members for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and then give you the latest USC football news. First, let's meet this week's panelists. Marc Kulkin, USC columnist who writes the Monday Morass, Yay or Nay, and Sunday Takeaways, in addition to regular season practice reports for football and basketball. Chris Arledge, former William Jewell College defensive back and team captain, USC columnist who writes the popular column Musings with Arledge. Erik McKinney, publisher and editor-in-chief of WeAreSC.com. Greg Katz, that's me, your host and moderator of Inside the Trojans Huddle, and a weekly USC columnist who writes the obvious and not so obvious, and IMHO Sunday. Before we kick off this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle, here's the latest USC football news. Respected sports gambling service BetOnline has USC a 2-1 favorite to win the 2022 Pac-12 conference. Oregon is 11-5 to win the Pac-12, while Utah is 5-1. Heralded Pitt Panthers wide receiver transfer Jordan Addison, the 2021 Biletnikoff Award winner, is set to begin visiting prospective schools this week. It's expected that USC will be one of his future official visits. In other transfer news, USC outside linebacker Elijah Winston announced last week he is now in the transfer portal, and former Trojans wide receiver Bru McCoy, who was in the portal, announced he is transferring to the University of Tennessee. This will be McCoy's third university. And finally, friends, USC's Inside the Trojans Huddle. Greatly appreciate your viewer and leadership and listenership. And we appreciate and encourage those of you watching on sites like YouTube. Click on the red subscriber and like buttons. It's greatly appreciated, and it's all free. All right, it's time for the opening kickoff and our first quarter topic and question. Panel, 2022 spring practices across the country have been completed, and updated preseason top 25 rankings are being released. ESPN's last updated way too early top 25 ranking. Trojans are ranked number 12 in the country. CBSSports.com ranks USC number 14. Respected West Coast Pac-12 columnist John Wilner says the Trojans are number 13, but USA Today's post-spring rankings doesn't even list the Trojans in their top 25. So, panel, what do you think USC should be post-spring ranked? Should they be ranked higher or lower than the aforementioned list? Our leadoff hitter, as always, Marc Kulkin. Where do you stand on where the Trojans are being ranked?
Exactly where they belong. Somewhere between 10 and 14. I mean, if you listen to social media, maybe even higher. I mean, USC's got a lot of hate going on right now. They haven't won a game yet. All they've done is compete in the transfer portal arena. So it's interesting that, you know, everybody has USC from anywhere range from 10 to 14, you know, that mid-range. USA Today couldn't spell USC for some reason, but they have UCLA in there. Obviously, these are all way too early preseason polls. They really don't matter. But I think it's fair. You know, you've got a potential Heisman winner at quarterback. You've got great running backs that transferred in. You've got a wide receiver room that's going to explode if they add another one. And I think they address their needs on defense enough that, you know, we talked about this on a previous show, that if they just improve 10 points per game, the offense is going to score a lot of points. So I think that's a fair ranking. And if they win, they're going to be in position to be where they need to be at the end of the season.
All right, Chris, what do you think? Fair ranking? High, low? What say you?
I don't have a problem with the ranking between 10 and 15. I actually think USC will probably be inside the top 10 by the end of the season, primarily because I think USC is going to have the best offense in the country. I think they're just going to score a ton of points against a relatively weak schedule. You know, you have to deal with Utah on the road. That's a tough place to play, and Utah will be good. You have Notre Dame at home. Notre Dame's not as good playing at the Coliseum as they are in South Bend. That's a winnable game. And most of the Pac-12 isn't very good. So I think USC is going to be a top 10 team. If they have them, you know, if they have them 12, 13, 14, that's fine. Those other teams play better last year than USC did. The USA Today ranking, I mean, that looks like something out of The Onion. Oklahoma number 4, USC unranked. Did that guy not pay attention to the whole offseason? Like, did he wake up after a 6-month nap and just plug in the teams based on the last week of the season last year? That's just silly. It doesn't make any sense. I also think Utah is a little bit overrated for what it's worth. I think they're good. Utah's not the 5th best team in the country. I don't think they're close to it. Oregon's probably right in Wilmer's ranking around number 20. I mean, this is a team that doesn't have an established quarterback and doesn't have an established coach. Only a couple of their coaches even have to shave. So I don't know how you put them. I don't know how you stick them up too much higher than USC. I just don't think it makes any sense. But yeah, I'm fine with all those rankings except that USA Today dribble.
Yes.
All right. Well, Eric, we've heard from Christopher Reeve, Arledge there. Can we get your opinion on this particular ranking?
Yeah, ultimately it's fine. I think I would slide them down a little bit just because I do like starting the year rewarding teams that had a good year last year. And I think when you come in 4-8, I don't have any problem if USC started at, let's say 20, they go out and beat Rice by 50 points, and then you throw them all the way up. I like those first few weeks of the season to just see the rankings kind of get tossed all over. I don't want to see a team move one spot, every week. Those first 3 weeks, I like a lot of sort of chaos early on. That being said, boy, if you look at USC, who's the head coach? Who's the quarterback? What kind of skill position do you have coming back? And do you have enough defensively? I understand why they're ranked where they are. When you look at them on paper, there's a lot to like. When you start, maybe some of these rankings are guessing at the end of the season based on kind of wins, losses. That's not a difficult schedule that USC has to go through. So if you're trying to tally up how many games can this team win, you can pretty easily get to 9 or 10. If you win 9 or 10 games, yeah, that's where you're going to end up ranked when you're a team like USC. So I absolutely can see, 12 to 16, something like that, where they've been slotted. The USA Today one, it's a little bit wild, but I also understand, again, a team I could have put, if I'm looking at it that way, I could see USC at 24, 25, just because that seems to be a spot where, is this team back? Do they have it, based on last year being terrible? And that's where you see a team like Texas thrown in, or I think Tennessee was like their number 25 team. Those kind of teams where I'm gonna head, like, maybe they'll be good, maybe they'll be bad. We want to start with them ranked just in case they are good, but we don't want to put them too high because we don't want to get clobbered if they win 4 games again. So I do see up and down because there's a lot of different ways that you can look at the rankings. If I'm doing it based on what I know about USC, yeah, I'm gonna put them at 10 because I think they're gonna win a lot of games. And if I'm guessing based on what the end of the year looks like and kind of what's there on paper, there's a lot to like about USC. I do think the rankings are interesting, right? I think that like 4 or 5, when you're talking about Utah can be ranked 5, but almost like the gap between 4 and 5 is massive. And it feels like a 10 compared to, when you're talking about what Ohio State has coming back and what Alabama and Georgia, even though Georgia just sent their entire rosters to the NFL, the kind of programs that I think are expected there. A long way of saying, yeah, I'm with you guys that, low teens kind of ranking makes sense to me to start.
Okay, well, I think that most of you have covered everything I would have said. I think they're going to be number 15 to start with, give or take. Utah, I always think that Utah is as good as Utah can be. I don't know if they're a top 5 team. I don't think so. I don't think they're a top 10 team, but they will be as good as they can be. I don't see them as a top 10 team. SC could, I think I'll just lead into the next quarter because I think that'll answer a couple of questions. So let's go into the second quarter. Panel in 2022, USC has 12 regular season games, opening with Rice at home and closing at home with Notre Dame. Of the 12 regular season games the Trojans play, which game do you believe is the proverbial statement game? Eric, what's the statement game?
I'm going to cheat. I'm going right off the top. I'm set. You guys can all kind of formulate what you're going to say about this. I'm going to cheat. I'm going to take 2 and possibly mention 3 just to
Eric,
kind of lay.
I got to get
Throw
comfortable.
the groundwork
here.
I'm
All
comfortable. Go
statements
ahead.
there, McKinney.
Like I said, here we go.
So
So
Mark is going to explode here in a second. Mark, you're not wearing a hat.
I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable. Eric, go ahead.
So the statement game is at Utah on October 15th. The problem with picking that is, boy, there are a lot of little pieces of information that we're going to get about this team before we get to Utah. And so at Stanford, I think is interesting. I don't think Stanford is going to be great, but they have some pieces coming back and they can play. That's the first road game for Lincoln Riley and for USC. That's the first conference game for Lincoln Riley and for USC. I think we could learn plenty about USC when they go play Stanford. Now, if they beat Stanford, you know, again, the statement game is at Utah for me, but I think there's different levels of the statement game. And then I'm also going to say Rice, Pete Arbogast, the you know, great USC radio play-by-play voice. We talk all the time every year where even when it's a team like Rice, when it was Western Michigan, when it's Fresno State, when it's teams like that, you do get a sense of what that team is going to be like based on if they come out and just roll that team. When USC hosted Western Michigan, yeah, they won, but you got a real sense of what that year might end up being like. When it was Fresno State and it was like the late win, you got a real sense of what that was going to be. San Jose State, same kind of thing. So again, it's cheating. I'm going to say Utah. That's my answer. Rice and Stanford, I think it's very important for USC to come out and show something in those games.
All right. Now, let's be honest. We appreciate that Eric has admitted that he's cheating.
Absolutely.
I think it's because the NIL now it means, what does they say the NIL stands for? Now
it's legal. You guys can investigate my past transgressions and other shows.
I'm going to take away your Heisman Trophy journalism award for that insolence you've just displayed. All right, Kulkin, try to maintain your emotions here on what Eric said. Are you going to give us one statement, or are you going to do another prelude of this and then this and then this and this? What's it going to be? What's the statement game?
1-0 on 3, baby. 1-0 on 3.
What the hell does that mean? 1-0 on 3.
He's going with Rice.
It means Rice. It means you got to win the first game. That's the statement game. Eric kind of covered it for everybody. Each game,
he didn't cover it for me. Did he cover it for you, Chris?
You know what, Greg?
There's 9 more games. I can go back. You guys want to give me my time back?
I thought you were going to. I thought you were going to hit every game on the schedule.
What Eric so eloquently summarizes, each game has its own statement because it's leveling up. If USC comes out and blows Rice away, which I think everybody is anticipating and hoping for. I mean, Greg, you're scaring us. You're giving us updates on Rice throughout spring and summer. So are they doing well? That's the statement game. Come out, win by 40, 50 points, handle Rice like you should. And then to Eric's second point, go win on the road. Because if USC can make a statement after a statement after a statement, each game is a statement game, whether it be Utah or whether it be Notre Dame at the end of the year.
Are you done?
Chris, let's hear about Fresno State.
Okay, wait a minute. I have faith in Arledge that based on the 2 previous panel members, Chris, it said a statement game. It wasn't statements game.
No, I mean, there are lots of games I'd like to talk about, but you wanted us to focus on just one.
Thank you.
I do have a quick rebuttal though. Rice is the only statement you can make against Rice is a bad statement. If you beat Rice by 40, it doesn't mean you're good. If you struggle against Rice or lose, then the statement you're making is that we're terrible. Rice is not the statement game. The statement game is Stanford, because USC needs to put an absolute beat down on Stanford. Stanford is not what they were 5, 6, 7 years ago. They are okay, but they're only okay. Shaw has not recruited as well. His offense is still about 15, 20 years behind everybody else's. USC needs to go and just give Stanford a brutal thrashing to let everybody else know what they're made of. That's what should happen. I think that's what will happen, but that's a statement game. You didn't ask about the must-win games, then I'd talk about all the others, but that's the statement game.
Well, and I appreciate that. We'll get to the must-win games actually next week, I think. I'll say that the statement game is Utah. I can't disagree with the other panelists have said and the way they.
Although you tried.
It's a long show, Mark.
Well, you can't disagree with McKinney. He went through every game. He said,
and you guys picked all my games.
Wait a minute. We have to admit, McKinney's the freaking publisher of We Are SC. You know, he calls the final shots.
He's great at it. He's just not good at answering questions. You
rules for thee, but not for me. I got it.
On the schedule.
Rules for thee, but not for me. Thanks, Eric. You said it.
Was that the New Testament or the Old Testament?
Greg, you're the one who made the rules.
Okay. All right. Here's the rule. I say that Utah is the statement game because I think that's going to be when SC should be what they really are. And we'll find out what they really are in that game. I think most of you have been to Utah. Those of you that are watching or listening have been to Utah. You know, they've expanded the stadium. They're probably as good as they've ever been in terms of enthusiasm as far as roster. So it's going to be exciting. I'm saying Utah, and let the schedule play out. All right.
Is this a good time for a plug? I mean, if you haven't subscribed to the Greg Katz Rice football newsletter, now's a good time to do it. We only have a few months before the open.
You know, it's amazing you said that because I was going to bring that up at halftime as part of a special adjunct to subscribing to We Are SC, Greg Katz's special Rice edition. And I will send everybody a 30-day free supply, and I'm just kidding, of Uncle Ben's rice. And hopefully I can convert you. Anyway, moving on to halftime. Your question, panel. This is a very intense question, one that seems like a stupid question, but actually, when you look at it, it's not quite as ludicrous as it seems. So, panel, both USC quarterback Caleb Williams and wide receiver Michael Jackson III wear jersey number 13 on offense. Caleb continues to wear number 13 in promotional shots and videos. How would you decide which player wears number 13 in the 2022 season? And I'm going to add this. What particular options would you have for the person who gets their number 13 jersey? I don't know, it's taken away. Is that the right word? Chris, what's the right word?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm going to stick with kind of a stupid question. And here's why it's kind of a stupid question. Does anybody in the world think that Michael Jackson is going to be wearing number 13 and that Caleb Williams is going to have to change? Does anybody think that? The coach doesn't even have to decide it. He just calls Michael over and says, okay, Mike, listen, you can fight for that number if you want, and you can fight against Caleb Williams, who's the quarterback that you want to throw to you and who's the face of this team and who's a Heisman Trophy candidate. You can do that if you want to. Go make a good choice, son. Pat him on the butt and send him back on the field. I mean, come on. Come on, Greg. It's over. It's not even a good number. It's not even a good number. Who cares about 13?
You sound like Howard Cosell. It's over. It's over.
Yeah, all right.
Down goes Razor. All right, Eric, what would you do if you're Lincoln Riley? How would you handle it?
Yeah, I don't want to be completely dismissive of Michael Jackson. That kid works insanely hard. He has done everything asked of him since he got in as an early enrollee, true freshman. I would remind him, as Chris said, you cannot have two players wearing the same uniform on the field at the same time, unless he wants to be limited to special teams or start working out at cornerback. I would tell him Caleb Williams is planning on taking the field for every significant offensive snap this season. And then he could decide where to go. I don't know, there are not very many low numbers. You're talking about 13 and under that are not retired that you can wear offensively. You could get a little zany and wear 31 as a wide receiver, which would be interesting. I don't know if there are kind of Michael Jackson tie-in numbers or something that you could do that would do that. But yeah, eventually, again, if he wants to play wide receiver significant minutes with Caleb Williams on the field this year, that's going to have to be changed. And I, you know, I don't anticipate this being like an issue where the two of them are yelling at each other about who's going to wear 13.
Okay, now, Mark, you're the kinder, gentler. You always have things in proper perspective. How would you handle this situation?
At least you didn't call me Hitler this week. I appreciate that. I'm a kinder, gentler.
You know how much stuff I took for that. That little slip of the tongue, it was a firestorm on the internet because it's who you called.
Problem, Greg. It was a slip of the tongue of who you called, though. That's what made it so funny. As far as
Chris is about ready to say, I didn't find that funny at all.
As far as
wait a minute, is Kulkin saying that if you would have called me Hitler, it would have made sense? What are you saying, Mark?
That's not what I'm saying.
Now listen, Greg, don't call people Hitler. Don't do it. It's not funny.
I swear I will not do that again. Okay. I've been reminded of that at least 4 million times this week. Okay, Mark, go ahead. Give us your thoughts.
Yeah, back to the original question. Even if Michael wants to switch to the defensive side of the ball, he's got another fight with Adonis Odie, who wears number 13. So it is a popular number at USC. He's not going to be wearing number 13 on offense. That's Caleb Williams' number. It's a matter of how much is it going to cost Caleb, and is it going to be a reasonable, giveaway. So I hear Joseph Manjak's number is available. That'll be the number that Michael's wearing a wide receiver this year. I agree with Chris.
Do you think
maybe not a stupid question, but maybe not a question we should have spoken about?
What was that? That was
he took a shot at
a stupid question, but okay. Now, obviously, more mature minds have to give an opinion, so I'm giving my opinion on this one. I think it's a difficult one, and I'll tell you why. In all seriousness, I saw the reply of both players when they were asked that question, and Caleb Williams handled it just like you'd expect. Well, it's something we can work out. I don't think it's a big problem, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But when they asked Michael Jackson III that question, he was not happy about it. He didn't say, I'm giving up my jersey. I can't remember the exact response. Maybe one of you guys remember it, but it was definitely terse. It was definitely like, I'm not giving up this number. And that's why I thought, and you all know this as former players, and I know it as a player and a coach, numbers are very, very important to players. And I think that's the number that Jackson had when he played in high school. And to give it up is like almost your identity. It will be interesting to me, at the least, how Lincoln Riley handles it, how he presents it. I think you're all right. There's no way that Caleb Williams is not going to be wearing number 13. But I think Chris brought up a good point. This is the quarterback's going to be throwing you passes. Do you really want to upset him? Do you really want to sit there and think that I can't put you on the field because I don't trust, because you're going to carry this anger onto the field? I'm sure it'll be worked out by Rice. Shameless plug. But I think that it is something to watch, because it can be a problem at some level. Because remember, other players will be watching this. One of the things that I thought in the past that, like Clay Helton, and especially, let's just take uniform number 55, how they took that uniform number and it became really, we'll give you this number. Well, if you give a number, which one are you taking away? 55 wasn't exactly something you take away, but it could be a problem. Hopefully it is not in the future. So let's move on here. And before we begin the second half, a reminder that you're watching or listening to WeRSC.com's Inside the Trojans Huddle. This week's WeRSC panelists include Marc Kulkin, Chris Arledge, Erik McKinney. I'm Greg Katz. We also encourage you to check out WeRSC.com, part of the On3 network, and become a subscriber to the best coverage of USC football and Trojans athletics. And as a bonus for the curious, WeRSC.com is offering a 7-day free trial, and in which you can also take a look at the monthly or yearly discount options to view our exclusive On3 content, which includes analysis, game-breaking stories, information, data on USC football, basketball, and the balance of USC athletics. Panel, we kick off the second half, the third quarter with this. and this is really interesting. A new controversial list by Sports Pac-12's Jack Follman has ranked the all-time Pac-12 running backs. The list ranks 25 running backs. In the interest of time, what I'm going to do to make things easier is I'm going to break it into thirds. We're going to look at 15 through 11 and give you a chance to comment. But here is 15 through 11. Remember, this is all time. 15, Kenyon Barner, Oregon. 14, Myles Gaskin, Washington. 13, Ricky Bell, USC. 12, Lendale White, USC. Number 11, Royce Freeman, Oregon. Mark, you're a longtime USC follower. Of that particular grouping of 5, what gets you, bothers you, says that's ridiculous? What do you think?
That number 13.
You clearly can't agree with anything in that, by the way. Greg has set you up to only disagree.
Yeah. That number 13 pops up right away. Ricky Bell. That he needs to be in that top 5 group, in my opinion. And then you're bumping a Trojan out of that top 5 group. That's how deep USC's tailback U goes. Maybe Lendale White could be moved up a little bit higher. You know, I wrote about that in my Monday Morass. Think about it. Had he and Reggie Bush stuck around and played together one more year, could USC have pulled off a trio of Heismans out of that backfield? That's how good Lendale could have been had he been the focal point. So of those first 5 that you mentioned, Ricky Bell and Lendale, Ricky for sure belongs way higher on that list.
Okay, Chris, what do you say of that particular upper third there?
I'll let everybody else fight over the USC pecking order here. Myles Gaskin jumped out at me, not because he wasn't a good player, because he was a good player and he put up good numbers. But I'm thinking they have Myles Gaskin as the best running back in Washington history on this list, and I don't get that. He's better than Corey Dillon or Napoleon Kaufman or Hugh McElhenny, which is an NFL Hall of Famer. I mean, that doesn't make any sense at all. This is a list that's based on a guy that is probably 19 years old, who just went through and looked at the yardage totals and threw some names up there. Doesn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
I got another comment, but it's not on this 5, so I'm going to wait.
Okay, Eric, what do you think about this upper grouping of 5?
Yeah, it's the recency bias, I think, stands out, and it's not the case when we go forward and get into the top 5. But when you look at the full 15 that you're going to mention, I think there's a clear recency bias on anyone that's not like obvious, top 4 or 5 in here. And yeah, Ricky Bell, Lendale White, I think both shuffle up. Myles Gaskin was the other one for me that, I mean, again, a good back, but this is not a list of good backs. It's supposed to be the 15 best in Pac-10, Pac-12. I guess you have to include 12. I think there was a Colorado guy on here somewhere. So
there's not even a Cal player in there. I mean, you left Marshawn Lynch off this list.
It's a
crap list.
You're gonna leave someone off, right? And I get you're gonna leave someone off, and that becomes the conversation piece. But yeah,
I think Rashawn Salam is one of the best Pac-12 backs that ever played. I mean, just because he never played in the Pac-12. I mean, what is that? It's the best players ever in the history of the conference, and they have a guy who didn't even play in the conference at number 8. What is that?
Good catch, man. Chris. Great catch.
I'm unhappy about that. He was a good player. I remember him. I just remember him playing in a different conference.
Well, I'll wrap up this upper third and say that the whole thing was blown up when I saw Ricky Bell at 13. I saw Ricky Bell play. I saw him play in high school when he was at Fremont. Ricky Bell is one of the all-time greats. He should have won the Heisman Trophy. He was that good. SC's never had a back as many great players as they've had. He is a closest version that you could get to Earl Campbell of Texas. Ricky Bell was hell unleashed. Unbelievable. Honestly, to put Lendale White ahead of Ricky Bell is ridiculous. Lendale was a good player. How good he could have been if he was the featured back in an I formation, who knows? Maybe he could have been an All-American. He wasn't. He had to share it. But Ricky Bell, oh my goodness, this guy was. If you're I can tell you if Chris Arledge had to tackle Ricky Bell one time, he'd probably say, okay, that's enough for me. And that's a compliment for Chris. Ricky Bell left people like a train going across the tracks and people walking. It was horrible. All right, let's move on to the second tier, which I thought was equally ludicrous in some ways.
There's a good chance I couldn't tackle any of the guys on this list. I want that to be clear to the viewers at home. I'm not making that claim for myself.
I was going to say, you definitely took that as a compliment, right, Chris?
All right, let's take a look at 10 through 6. Number 10, Toby Gerhart, Stanford. Number 9, Christian McCaffrey, Stanford. Number 8, Rashawn Salam, Colorado. Number 7, LaMichael James, Oregon. Number 6, Anthony Davis, USC. All right, let's stay in the same order. So, Mark, what did you think of this grouping?
Yeah, it just goes back to the whole thing. If I have to re-rank this group, Anthony Davis number 1, McCaffrey 2, Gerhart, James, Salam. How's that?
All right, I like that. You rearranged it. Okay. What do you think, Erik?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I'm confused. LaMichael James was good at Oregon. Kenyon Barner was at 15. I was at that. What was it? The 2013 game.
He's still running.
Kenyon Barner. So, like in my mind, Kenyon Barner is the greatest running back that's ever existed at Oregon. Well, I think it was 5 touchdowns and 300 something yards that he had there. Christian McCaffrey, I in the top 10, because if you're talking about running back, there's pass catching too, and all of that stuff. Yeah, we went over Rashawn Salam there at 8. I think it's fine. I think the fact that you're talking about all these guys ahead of Ricky Bell is, that's always gonna kind of slant this a little bit. But I get, getting some other guys in there. Personally, any top 10 that isn't 10 USC guys, I would have a question about when you're talking about, running back history in the Pac-12.
All right, Chris, what do you think?
First, the gulf between McCaffrey and Gerhart is enormous. Gerhart was a good football player. Christian McCaffrey is a superstar. He's the best guy in that group of 5. He's the best guy. He's better than Anthony Davis, and he's better than all the other guys. Christian McCaffrey is a stud who can do everything. And although he's known more as a pass catching guy, he has pretty good size too. He can run between the tackles. He's a superstar. As for Anthony Davis, who had an unbelievable career as a Trojan, who would you rather tackle? Would you rather tackle Anthony Davis or Ricky Bell? Anthony Davis was a guy who wasn't particularly big and wasn't particularly fast. He did a tremendous amount with what he was given. But I honestly don't think AD is in the same class as some of the guys behind him, including McCaffrey, including Ricky Bell. And so I don't know what he's doing at 6.
Okay, I'll say this. I thought McCaffrey was one of the greatest really of all time in the Pac-12. I watched him at field level. He was unbelievable. I think if he had played maybe some other places, he would have gotten a little bit higher esteem, but really he was better than Anthony Davis. He was better than LaMichael James. Toby Gerhart was a stud physical running back. Rashawn Salam, I just never understood why he won the Heisman Trophy. I'm sorry, that was just my opinion. But my goodness, I thought Christian McCaffrey belonged in the top 5 myself. But what is the top 5? Well, let's take a look at the top 5. Number 5, Mike Garrett, USC. Number 4, Marcus Allen, USC. Number 3, Charles White, USC. Number 2, O.J. Simpson, USC. Number 1, Reggie Bush, USC. Mark, what do you see? What do you think of the top 5?
Leave Reggie at 1 and just toss the other 4 around, and you're not wrong. I mean, you're talking about 5 Heisman winners. So my first choice is Reggie, and then you can take the other 4 and figure it out. There's no wrong answer.
Okay. Do you agree with that, Erik?
Yeah, the fact that there's 5 USC guys in the top 5. I know you talked about Christian McCaffrey potentially being up there, but I think that's the right answer to me, is that when you have kind of the legacy a running back that USC has, and those guys. And again, this is where, when you're stretching back to Mike Garrett, that seemed to be kind of one of the only guys where you went, back in kind of putting those lists together. I'm sure you could find another, 3-4 guys from that era or around there that could end up here in this top 15. But yeah, I think that's right. Greg, I know we're going to get to you and you're going to tell us why OJ is number one. And absolutely, I know that there's going to be a lot of people that saw him play and will say that. I'm okay with Charles White up ahead of Marcus Allen, even though I think there's people that would probably argue Marcus Allen as being number one on this list. I think maybe of those four, Reggie, OJ, Charles, and Marcus, you probably have that top four right to me.
All right, Chris, what do you say?
I'd probably switch White and Allen, but I don't have a problem with it. I'm going to make a defense of Reggie Bush here because I know you're going to have something different to say. Here's and here's the reason. OJ was probably every bit as fast as Reggie, and he was bigger. The problem is OJ played during a time when offenses simply weren't as good at getting people in space. You go watch that Beebe OJ game. OJ gets shut down the entire first half. Earl McCulloch does nothing in that first half either. And the reason is because offenses were simply incapable of getting guys in space. OJ starts to get off in the second half because the offensive line starts to wear down UCLA. He gets his big run on a 3rd and 8 carry-off tackle. Reggie was playing in an age when he was in space consistently, and Reggie Bush in space was a frightening thing to see. Could OJ have done all of that? Yes. He may have even been able to do it better because he would have been better between the tackles than Reggie was. But OJ didn't have the benefit of that. OJ was in a much more limited offense, and therefore Reggie was able to do things that you didn't see from OJ. So while I think OJ was probably the more talented back, I think Reggie was the most exciting Pac-12 player that I've probably ever seen, and I think he deserves that number one ranking.
Okay, I will give my viewpoint on this as Kulkin smirks.
We know where you're going.
And Arledge gives a obligatory smile. And Eric's just stone-faced going, I can go. Can we move on after this? All right, O.J. Simpson's the greatest running back. He is not the most he's not Reggie Bush. I will tell you that. But O.J. did it in 2 years. He should have been the Heisman Trophy winner his junior year. They gave it to Gary Beeben. In terms of Earl McCulloch did nothing in the game, in the 67 game in the first half. He had an incredibly impactful reverse that he ran. Eventually it fumbled and Mike Scarpace recovered some 50 yards downfield. So he did have an impact in that particular game in the first half. But, I would say that you're all right in how you all presented it. But here's the thing about Simpson. Take a look at the Ohio State game when he went 80 yards. Take a look at the cut that he made and his explosion afterwards. That was the beauty of O.J. Simpson. He didn't have to be put out in space to be sensational. Yes, he had a handful of plays, maybe 5. They were blocked 20 different ways, but it was sweep left, sweep right, double team, traps, whatever. But what he did and the pounding that he took, okay, Ricky Bell took a pounding too. But the thing about Simpson is that he had the type of talent and realized that talent. No controversy when he was at SC. And I'll tell you what, let's leave out the controversy with Reggie. Okay. I will totally say that he was deserving of the Heisman Trophy. He was the best player in the country that year. But I'm not going to belabor the point that, that he was cheating. And probably if I was coaching against him, I would have said, why am I losing this guy? He shouldn't even be on the field in the first place. And if it was a CIF game, which is the governing body of Southern California, he probably would have forfeited his team's stature, no matter if he ran for 5,000 yards in a game. I have to personally separate what a player does and what he shouldn't be doing as part of the equation. But that's not why I think Simpson's number one. I think Simpson's number one because I just think he was the greatest back. He wasn't the greatest punt returner. He wasn't the greatest kick returner. Bush was the best by far punt returner. No question about it. You give him a little space, you're dead. Simpson a couple times ran some balls back, but it was never at the Reggie Bush level. I'll tell you that right now. I am glad at the age that I am that I was able to see all these players and make an evaluation that I didn't have to look at them on film. So, everyone's entitled.
I'm just happy to hear, Greg, that none of USC's opponents had any player that received improper benefits. I mean, I'm sure Vince Young never had a $100 handshake from one of those.
You're absolutely right. But Bush got caught. That's the problem I have. He did get caught. And whether you say, well, the NIL now is legal or what have you, it doesn't matter. You play with the rules you played with at the time, and you choose either to go with them or you choose not to go with them. And, that was his choice. And that's a discussion for another matter. I know that Mark believes that one day that Reggie will get his Heisman back, and maybe he will. So, that'll be something that we'll keep an eye on. So I think that was a good discussion, which brings us to the famous fourth quarter here. We all know what that means. It's Arledge time, but we have to do what we always do. We
refurbished.
Very good. Well done.
Oh.
I did this because of the demands of the panel. Unfortunately, the wick doesn't seem to be cooperating, but there we go.
His hair's on fire.
There we go. Let's see. How does that look? Oh, you can see it this time. Oh, there it goes. Oh, look at that. All of a sudden, I belong in Vegas doing a magic trick. Okay. So, Chris Arledge, this is your spot. A lot of people love hearing from you. What are you going to entertain us with this week?
Well, Greg, I have a public service announcement today.
I wish you would.
You know how much I care about protecting our viewers from strife in their relationships. It's something that's very important to me. So there's some things that I think I need to say.
I wish you would.
All right. Over the past few years, we've gotten sloppy, and for good reason. I used to plan my schedule around USC football. There were 12, sometimes 13 holy days. Those days were not to be interfered with. If somebody wanted to do something on one of those days, they could. I love living in a free country. They just weren't to ask me to participate, especially if it was one of the two high holy days, the days of the Notre Dame or UCLA games. Now, I like to think that I'm an understanding guy, though I may not sound like it for the next few minutes. I'm able and willing to tolerate a great many things. As you guys know, I have a big, kind heart. But some things are just not right. Planning something on a USC holy day is not right. Now, in recent years, under Coach Clueless, I'd still watch the games. But it was different. It became a chore. It was an obligation. It wasn't a labor of love. It was a job. For that reason, I became sloppy in my football watching habits. And I allowed those around me to become sloppy in their football watching habits. Well, now times have changed. It's time for us to get serious. It's time to lock it up. So, I've been nominated by the diehard USC football fans in your life to deliver the following public service announcement. Listen, some of it's going to sound harsh, and I don't mean it to be, but I do mean for you to take it seriously because it's very important. I want to talk to you about football watching etiquette. Now, some of you know these rules already, but a little reminder never hurt. Some of you don't seem to know them, or you know them and you choose to ignore them. Either way, I'm going to need you to listen to this, and I'm going to need you to modify your behavior accordingly, okay? First, this is to the significant others. A USC football game is not the time for a couple's date. I mean any kind of couple's date. We are trying to focus on the game. We don't care right now that you think we'd like Susan's husband. He is no doubt a very nice guy, and we're sure he likes football too. We don't care. We don't care if Susan has been saying for a long time that the four of us should get together. We don't care that they're free Saturday. We don't want to. And it's not right to ask. You're better than that. Now, believe me when I say that I'm doing this for your own good. Because if a Pac-12 official makes a terrible call, when a Pac-12 official makes an absolutely inexcusable call, we're probably going to yell at the television. and the veins might come out of the neck just a little bit. I might even throw the throw pillow right next to me on the couch. It must be named that for a reason. Now, nobody's in danger when I do this. You don't need to call for help. At the same time, it's not pleasant to see. Do we really want Susan to watch us, or, God help us, Susan's kids to see us acting this way? Do you really want your friend Susan to hear me say, when I'm not in my right mind, that I'm glad the other team's free safety is holding his knee because he's probably a criminal and he probably deserves it? There are things I think and sometimes say that the outside world should not be privy to. So come on, let's make a wise decision. Let's just choose another day. Don't argue. Don't try to change our minds. Just choose another day. You can punish us with a couple's get together some other time. And please don't invite a fan of the other team over to watch the game. Yes, maybe we do have a good-natured rivalry with that person. Maybe we genuinely like them. Maybe we joke around and it seems like everything is okay. And it is on any other day. But if you invite that Notre Dame fan over to watch the USC Notre Dame game, there's a chance that things will not be okay. If the Irish score, and if things are going south, and if that stupid leprechaun is dancing around, and if that friend of ours who loves the Irish has a big grin on his face and is humming Notre Dame's victory march, there's a good chance that for that brief moment, I will hate him with the burning intensity of 1,000 suns. I don't want to be in that situation. You shouldn't want me to be in that situation. He can watch the game at his place, or he can watch with his fellow Notre Dame friends down at the local prison. I don't care. I just don't want him here. Not today. And I need you to understand that. Listen to me. The right people should be in the room, and only the right people. Now, let's close this out with a little discussion about the proper etiquette for those actually in the room. Don't talk about other stuff. I don't care if you saw a great queso recipe. I don't care what Jill said at work. I'm not interested in your new moisturizer. And if you want to tell us how football is inferior to soccer, the beautiful game, most of the time, I can hear that statement and just shrug it off. I'll just laugh. Sure, I'll think less of you as a person for saying it. And I'll know that you're a man who always pees sitting down. But you can say it and I'll tolerate it on other days. But don't you dare make a comment to me like that during the USC football game. If you do, somebody better have a red card present because we're going to need it. Now, please understand, I'm not saying you shouldn't discuss those other things. I'm saying there are other times for those conversations. There are 8,760 hours in a year. If USC plays 13 football games, only 39 of those hours are filled with a USC football game. Literally, you have the remaining 99.55% of the year to talk about those other meaningless things. Even that soccer nonsense if you want. That stuff can wait. Don't do it here and don't do it now. But can you talk about the game? Of course. Can you ask questions about the game? Yes, but let's be selective. Now is not the time to ask what holding is. You should know that already. And if you don't, you should look it up on your smartphone quietly. This is why Google was invented. Or you can ask the question on a Tuesday evening. That's a great time to ask. This is game time. This is not the first day of intro to football class. This is not a remedial lecture on football for foreign travelers who have never seen the game. Game time is not the time for that nonsense. So yes, we know it looks like we're just running the ball right into a big crowd of their guys. And we know you think it would make more sense for the guy with the ball to run all the way around him instead of running into him. We know you think this, but this is not the time to explain to you what an inside running game is and why it's important. It's just not the right time. And we're going to need you to accept that. In closing, it's only 39 hours a year, people. That's it. 0.45% of the year. This is not too much to ask. So please, please respect us, respect the game, respect yourselves, and just follow the rules.
All right. Everybody got that straight? For those of you that will need a divorce within the next year, Chris has some referrals for you if you follow exactly what he said. And with that being said,
I'd like to address this point about not talking about queso, though. That seems like a topic that could be talked about during a football game.
Maybe at halftime. But Mark, if you're going to talk about queso, I'm not going to watch a game with you. I'm trying to watch the game. I don't want to hear about it.
I'll never compliment you on being a good host, Chris.
Yeah, well, nobody ever has. So that's
okay.
I personally was a little concerned about the reference of the guy sitting down to pee or whatever it was that you had.
I didn't mean to insult you, Greg. You pee how you need to.
Well, very thoughtful of you, Chris. Thank you so much for that helpful insight. All right, let's get on to the fourth quarter here where we get some serious stuff. What was the worst weather, home or away, that you ever witnessed firsthand for a USC football game? Eric, what's the worst?
I've got a little, it's a combination. It's weather plus atmosphere plus result. In 2010, USC is hosting Notre Dame at the Coliseum. It does not rain at the Coliseum. It does not rain in Southern California. I'm sitting in the stands, not prepared for rain. It opens up and it feels like it does not stop raining for hours. I am soaked. I am in wet jeans, fully saturated. I am watching USC with Mitch Mustaine in at quarterback, try to lead the Trojans to a comeback win against Notre Dame. At this point, I've gone down on the field because we're in the last 5 minutes. I watch him throw a deep ball to Ronald Johnson that is going to be caught for a touchdown. And for that split second, it is not raining. I am not wet. It feels amazing. The ball lands on the turf. I am soaked. I am miserable. It is the worst weather event in the history of anything.
I hate you, Eric. I hate you.
What? Okay,
I was
now
just saying, Eric, I remember
you don't
that
hate
game.
on this show, Mark.
I'm sorry. I just remember that game, and I remember how bad I felt for Ronald Johnson because it was the perfect pass. It was the game-winning touchdown, and then it wasn't. But to answer your question,
thank you.
Purdue at the Coliseum, 117 degrees at least. And I'm watching band members being taken out of the Coliseum on stretchers. It was just, look, football is played in any type of weather. I've been to Tempe in September when USC is played at 12:30 in the afternoon. It was hotter at the Coliseum this day. And I don't know for the life of me how it happened, how I survived, but I have never been more miserable in all of my life. Horrible, horrible day. And I wasn't playing. I didn't have a helmet on or shoulder pads.
Do you usually go to the game in a helmet and shoulder pads?
In my younger days.
Okay, we can buy that. Chris, what strikes you as a horrible weather day, home or away?
Actually, I was going to go the same direction as Mark. I remember that Purdue game and just how impressive it was. At least it was a win, and it was our first look at Carson Palmer. If you remember, he had that play where he sort of rolled out and stopped and chucked it about 60 yards downfield, and we got to see that, and it felt like things were turning around. They weren't, of course, because Paul Hackett was going to be around for a few more years, but it at least felt good. I also remember McKinney's game, and that Notre Dame game was just horrific. All of it was horrible, all of it. And I'm sorry that he brought it up because now I'm kind of sad again. So I would like to not talk about it anymore. But I was going to talk about Purdue, and I can't remember off the top of my head any other games where. I mean, there have been some Notre Dame games in South Bend that were chilly, but nothing painful that I remember.
If I was going to bring up a rain game, it would have been the game at Cal. I think it was 2005. It wasn't even rain. It was just like a mist that never stopped. But you walked out of there like you just stepped out of the washing machine. It was miserable.
All right. Well, I've never stepped out of a washing machine. But I can say that I'm going to take the Erik McKinney exception. 3 games come to mind, and I'll use them 3, 2, and 1. In 1963, I experienced USC in Oklahoma in the Coliseum, and it was well over 100 degrees. The air was still Oklahoma with Bud Wilkinson and Joe Don Looney at halfback and a host of other players. It was so hot. There was no days of air conditioning on the sideline. they put little bamboo covers on top of the benches to try to make it better. And I remember the crowd was cut down. The other one I remember is 1970 was just a torrential downpour against Notre Dame in the Coliseum. And Joe Theismann was the quarterback. And it was just like, get out your canoe and your oars and go from there. But I'm going to say the one that I remember was the one that Mark brought up, was at Cal. And the reason I remember that was, one, my poor girlfriend had to sit out there in the stands and, soak it up, so to speak. But there was also a wind to it. And the point was, it was the old Cal press box. In those days, the internet group was not considered on par with the normal mainstream group of writers. And they had us go outside on a portable bench or whatever it was. And they gave us the most ridiculous see-through, how do I want to put it? Like
cellophane.
And I'm sitting there, and here you got all this electronic equipment, right? And here comes the rain. And we're going, this is absolutely freaking insane. And all I kept worrying about, I don't care about the game. Just don't get myself electrocuted or short out my computer. And I thought the game would never end, and it was freezing. And then the rain looked like it was going sideways. But to Mark's point, it was just miserable. And that was a combination. So those three are the ones that stick out to me. And I agree with Chris. I've been to Notre Dame when it's been cold. If the wind is howling, then it's really miserable, because then it feels like it's just cutting you in half.
Yeah.
But actually, Notre Dame has never been that horrible. That's one of the reasons they don't play anymore in November, because when USC under John McKay, they used to play November. It was freezing. It was the worst. And McKay said, no, we'll play in October. We're not going back in November. And he had the power to get it done. So, all right. It's overtime. And you know what that means? That means one of our favorite segments, viewer questions and panel answers in a free-for-all format. For those of you that are watching or listening, if you'd like to submit a question that we can answer or give you our opinion, just go to either the Gary P. or We RSC members message boards and post a reply under the topic. So let's take a look at question number 1. This is from Bogey in Monterey Country Panel. He writes, do you know if there's any discussion or effort to restore USC's football uniform to the classic look that it wore from 2002 to 2005? 2006, the pants colors changed from a beautiful bright gold to yellow. I would also argue, but cannot prove, that over the years, the Cardinal home jerseys have become more red than the deep Cardinal color worn in the 60s and 70s. One final point, the red collar and banding on the sleeves on the white road jerseys have got to go. Just get our colors right. What say you guys? Thanks again for all you do. All right, jump in, guys.
I mean, I haven't heard of any, specific changes. The colors do change. I mean, based on just material each year and that kind of stuff, you're always going to see kind of a color grade difference. It would not surprise me if there was some kind of tweak. Pete Carroll did that when he got to USC, wanted to kind of put his stamp on things and tweaked it and went with kind of the more throwback look when he got there. Lincoln Riley absolutely has every bit of the power. I mean, way more power than Pete Carroll had when Pete Carroll first got to USC. Lincoln Riley could have him come out in whatever he wants basically this year. Honestly, as long as they don't wear those chrome red helmets with I think it was like the shiny chrome face mask and the
Christmas
McDonald's
ornament
shoes. Anything outside of that is fine. I think that you've got a group of people at USC now that aren't going to let things get too crazy with the uniforms. But I again have not heard anything specific. It would not shock me if there was a little kind of change here or there, just because a coach is always going to want to kind of here's where my tenure started and what we looked like.
I think they should take a throwback uni for every home game. There you go. Just have a crescent, have the what do you call them? The athletic lines, go with the plain, do a classic for every home game. And then you're keeping the colors and you're not going crazy with the Christmas ornament helmets.
The mesh practice jerseys that go down about a third of the way down,
yes.
down the chest.
Get the neck rolls, the Brian Bosworth jerseys and the neck rolls. Yes.
Chris, do you have any comment on this?
I think Pete's changes to the single stripe on the shoulders was a great change. I did not like the previous jerseys with the alternating stripes, so I don't want him to go back to that. I do think the jerseys look redder and cheaper than they used to, but I don't have strong feelings about it. I don't want alternate jerseys. I don't want a bunch of different colors. It's USC. We don't have to play like that.
I agree. I don't like alternate jerseys. I don't like what Oregon does. It works for Oregon. It doesn't work for USC. Tradition does make a difference. I'll say this: when Carroll changed the uniforms when he got here, all he did was go back to the 1960s. Those were the uniforms during the Simpson era that they wore. I always thought they were beautiful jerseys. I thought one of the good additions they ever made was putting the logo on the side of the helmets. I thought that was a good change. So I mean, I like that. I think I tell you what does bother me. I don't know why it should, but it does, is when I see Lincoln Riley wearing his coach's shirt and it looks like an Oklahoma shirt. It looks more red. I mean, if I close my eyes, I go, okay, put the white OU on there instead of SC. I don't know whether he does. I don't think he does it on purpose per se, but someone should say, look, here's what we'd like you to wear. And I tell you also what I'd like to see. I'd like to go back to when the assistant coaches all wore the same clothes and the head coach was a little bit different, like during the McKay era, and McKay wore different pants, more cardinal pants and what have you. I thought it was kind of classy myself, but I think it is good food for thought. So let's go to the
so Greg, just to jump in, the coaches they all did wear the same thing at the spring game. And yeah, one of the things I got from someone watching was why aren't they wearing USC colors? And so that's always going to be right. Mark and I talked before games when they come out in kind of the warm-up jerseys and all that. That's all kind of Nike produced stuff for the players before games and for the coaches during games. I'm with you. It does not, what the coaches wore for the spring game did not scream USC. I think you had a little here. It said Trojans kind of in some kind of font, but no, interlocking SC, nothing really off the top that said, that screamed USC about that. So that will be interesting to see if that's what they end up wearing during the season.
Well, I just hope that Nike doesn't get to the point where they lose what USC is all about. I totally agree with Chris. It's the tradition, no names on the back. I think there's something to be said about that. I never understood, like Penn State. They'd say, "Oh, the Penn State uniforms are so great." I go, "They are so bland that they're just horrible looking to me." And I don't know why they get all this credit for, the Penn State, their classic uniforms. I think they're classically bad. So let's move on.
I love them.
I'm just looking forward to everyone wearing number 13 this year. That's what I'm.
You know what? That's a good thing. I couldn't agree with you more on that. I think the whole team should come out in number 13, like they salute Jackie Robinson in baseball.
There it is.
Where Jackie.
I'll have to put the names on the back. It's the only way you'll be able to distinguish between all the 13s.
There you go. See, now there's another good thing that we can do. I hope the people that are at USC that have the power to do things listen to this show to get some great ideas.
Oh, I definitely hope the power brokers at USC are listening to this show. That would be really good news.
We'll have a Todd Marinovich bobblehead day.
All right, now here's the second. Let's get to the second question here. This is from Rigged for Fun. Recruitment, whether it be on the high school level or the transfer portal, does there seem to be a problem with getting both offense and defensive linemen? We've seen several linemen move to other schools who would certainly help Wise or starting. I'm just wondering if this is because of a lack of notoriety or a lack of previous coaching. What's the problem, guys? Where's the beef?
Can we give them a year to actually have a full recruiting cycle before we worry about this? I don't think it's going to be a problem this year. I can understand why offensive linemen didn't want to play at USC under the old regime. I mean, I can understand why lots of people didn't want to play under the old regime, but these guys haven't had a full recruiting cycle. So I think it's way too early to say that there's a problem. I don't think we know that yet.
Yeah, you're also talking about recruits that have seen or what Oregon was, what USC was, what Oklahoma, Washington, whatever you want, Alabama, Georgia. they're not coming in and saying, oh, let me learn about these schools now. They've watched them for 6, 7, 8 years. This is not something where a USC staff was going to be able, no matter who it was going to be able to come in and say, no, this is what USC is now. They've seen kind of results, and USC not able to churn. We've talked about kind of the 2 first-round offensive linemen that have gone out, but for the amount of talent that has come in on the offensive line and defensive line, the results, kind of how you turn them out in terms of who's going to the NFL, that's not been there for USC. And those are the results that recruits are seeing. I think, Chris said it best. Yeah, this is going to take a little bit, because you've got to show some proof on the field for USC. What recruits have in terms of proof on the field, it's really hard to convince them, no, you need to look at what Oklahoma did and then bring that over here. This is something where they've been hearing from those other schools for a long time too, and seen results from the other programs.
Mark, you want to donate some opinion on this?
I just think for the guys in the trenches, it's going to be, those are the guys who want to see a difference before they're going to commit. We can throw out the whole NIL and, these guys want to get paid, yada, yada. And that's part of it, but it's like this much of it. They want to see a physicality at USC that they haven't seen in a long time on both sides of the ball. So I think this is the year. Chris hit on it. Let the new staff show everybody, look, this is not the old USC that you've seen for the last 5, 7, 8 years. We're going to run the ball. We're going to be physical. We're going to smash you in the mouth on the other side of the ball. And then I think you'll see the players that we're hoping we're going to come to USC start coming to USC.
And I think you're set up pretty well, right? You had the 2 offensive linemen go. You've got Andrew Voorhees this year, where it's a little different with an interior guy, but maybe you turn him into, maybe a big time NFL prospect, a guy who's in the second round, maybe talking about first round. The other side, you've got Tuli Tuipulotu, another guy, maybe you can push him up into the first round. So you have a chance, to prove it on paper, both as a group and with some individual guys.
Well, I think that, it's going to be interesting to see how they go. I think Lincoln Riley already has credibility. He's proven in the past that he can run the ball. I don't know why an offensive lineman wouldn't say, hey, there's opportunity there. I've seen what they've already done. He's had 1,000-yard rushers. What more would you want? But I'm a little concerned about the defensive line recruiting, but it should be interesting. I think they're going to be okay. They may not be as fast as I would like them to be okay. So let me get to the third question here. This was a controversial one. I'm not sure if Chris has checked out on us, but I know, Eric, you can fill in for Chris on this one. This is one that I think may be one of the most explosive questions we've actually had since we've been doing this series. So here it is. This is from Trojan Fan in Bama.
You don't have to read this question, Greg. You really, really don't.
Oh, it's yes. The answer is yeah. If Mark's responding like that, it's yes.
I don't know why Mark would be upset that a guy wants to know whether Mark pays his way onto the show so he gets to talk with Chris Arledge every week. I'm giving Mark a chance to refute that question. Mark, can you say that you don't do that?
I can promise you I don't do that. Mark barely has 2 pennies to rub together. Okay.
I do. This is the only time I get to talk to Chris. This is the only reason I do the show, is so that I can spend some time with Chris. This is the most face-to-face time I get with him.
Yeah. Chris and I have he might not agree. I think we have a very similar personality, very sarcastic. I hold my tongue a lot more on the show than I probably should. So, warning.
Well, let me just make sure. Chris, Eric, we're going to sign off with this. WeRSC does not pay Mark money to be able to have to talk with Chris. Is that
you tried to pay me to go away, though?
Well, these are important questions, and I know that the people that are listening want to know, is it true? And I think we've put this one to rest. In fact, I tell you what, I think Arledge didn't want to answer the question. He's the big.
He knew what was coming.
He's the big cheese. Oh, I answer all the questions. I know how to.
My computer just blacked out on me.
Just blacked out. Yeah, that's right, Mark. You think he wimped out? Come on, we all know it. We'll give him a chance next week to explain himself on this. He's not going to get away by just ducking out when the tough.
He ducked into a phone booth and put on his cape, and he's helping.
No doubt about that. You know, he's his older ego. He's Christopher Reeves. He probably just flew out of a building with a cape. No doubt about it. But
I think the problem is that we only paid him for an hour this week, and so he popped out right at that time.
Well, there you learn something new every day, right? All right. Well, that's a wrap for this edition of Inside the Trojans Huddle. Big thank you to this week's panel, the great Marc Kulkin, the great Chris Arledge, great Erik McKinney, and a special thank you to all of you for watching or listening to Inside the Trojans Huddle. Until next Tuesday, this is your host, Greg Katz, reminding all of you to fight on, everybody.